Hi, this is I'm.
Once you know it's for real,
I know.
you're like,
Okay, let's stop. Hi, I'm Kirsten Jones,
and I'm Susie Walton.
and this is our podcast. Hashtag Raising Athletes with Kirsten and Susie.
Our passion is supporting parents and raising not only strong athletes, but extraordinary people.
Join us each week as we tackle all topics youth sports, including everything from early specialization and overuse injuries
To helping our kids feel empowered and learn how to advocate for themselves, not only in the classroom and on the court, but at dinner tables and in their communities.
We'll be talking to coaches, athletes, parents,
And anyone else who will speak to us.
about their experiences with youth sports and their paths to success.
And even more importantly, their failures. Yes, we're going to get into the gritty details of what went wrong so that we can all learn from it. Teach our kids
And ourselves.
how to do better next time.
Because in the words of Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. So welcome to Raising Athletes, because we love to win too.
Let's do this.
Hello and welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach. And Susie and I started this podcast nearly 5 years ago to help parents, athletes, coaches, everyone navigate this youth sports parenting jungle, this $20 billion business that seems to just kind of get more and more insane as we go. And in fact, through my last 23 years of being a parent, I, got this idea to write this little book about it because it seems like we feel like, are we the only ones? I have parents come up to me all the time. Am I the only one that thinks this is nuts? And I think so many of us can relate to that it being crazy, but we don't know what to do about it. So today, my guest, Linda Martindale, was a former D1 basketball player. She's a mom. She's a high school basketball coach, and she does what I do on the opposite coast, out in Massachusetts. So we're just going to have a fun conversation about all of this stuff. Everything from being a parent to being a coach to, having our kids get recruited or not. There's so many great things we can dive into. So thank you, Linda, for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have the conversation.
So full disclosure, our boys didn't play together at a prep school, but your son played at the same prep school that my younger son played at. So just a couple of weeks ago, we got connected through Worcester Academy, who I adore, both Jamie and Dan Sullivan. Shout out to Worcester Academy and Jamie and Dan Sullivan. And, actually, maybe we even start there about prep school. And, well, yeah. Okay. Let's talk about, we got so much to talk about. Let's talk about you first, and then we'll come back and talk about prep school. But that was the connection. We jumped on a phone call, which was supposed to be 30 minutes and turned quickly into 2 hours to cover all this ground. But maybe we'll give everyone, the parents, the athletes, the coaches, everyone listening, a little bit of your background.
Okay. So I was a college basketball player long ago. And I was also a college.
Arizona State, right?
Oh,
Pac-12.
No.
Oh,
That's
no.
the UofA.
Oh, sorry. Oh my gosh, I just said the wrong thing. And I was just there. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful campus. We were just there last weekend.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Sorry. Bear down.
Yeah, bear down. Back when it was the Pac-10. Now we know it's the Pac-2. But, and I have 4 children. They're all college level athletes, 4 different sports, 4 different levels. My oldest being a Division I college basketball player. And my daughter was a ski racer and then a beach volleyball player at an NAIA school. My next is a 6'7" soccer player, Division III school. And my little one is in the recruiting process for lacrosse. And I'm also a high school boys basketball coach. And I was coaching girls. I did coach in college for a little bit, and then I switched over to boys. And I have a kind of new perspective on coaching boys and having coached girls. And then I became a certified mental fitness, mental wellness, not sure what to call that. But I work with athletes and coaches on the mental part of the game, which you and I both know is as daunting as anything else. So that's where I am.
So why boys? Why did you switch from girls to boys?
That's a great question. And there wasn't, it wasn't so decided that I wanted to do that specifically. I just love to coach. And I'd coached girls, pretty much my whole career. And when the boys' job came up, I went for it, did not get the job. And a male coach got the job in front of me with way less experience, in fact, he had never been a varsity coach. So I thought, I should have gotten the job back then, and it wasn't the right timing for me. So a few years later, when it came up again, I just had to go for it and got the job. And, that's how it ended up. So no strong coaching boys or girls, honestly.
Okay. You feel like it's fairly similar, or what are the big differences between coaching boys and coaching girls, do you think, at the high school level?
I think it's similar. I think it depends on the team. I think there's, the pace of the game is a little bit different. I think in general, it's player to player. I see some players that play a certain way, and male or female, and across the board, I would say.
So you texted me the other morning that you were in the middle of tryouts, and you were like, oh my gosh, I was reading your book and I needed a little dose of your book to get me through the tryouts. So could you take me down that road? How many athletes tried out? How many parents were calling? Like, what did the process go? How does it go for you? Because I think it's fairly similar. I'm in Los Angeles, but I know every part of America right now, just making the high school team has become a huge challenge.
Huge challenge. I think we had 79 athletes for about 40 spots. And I think everybody knows that there are more athletes who could have been put on a team than were put on a team. So there were not enough spots for the quality of players who tried out, which is the worst part, honestly, of being a high school coach. Luckily, I have a big staff, and we had 4 full days of assessments. So that is the number one thing for me as a coach, is making sure that we get that right. And definitely have some parents who, want to know what happened, some athletes who want to know what happened. But in general, we're really straight with kids from the get about what the expectations are, and the fact that there are kids who are not going to make it, even though they're good enough to make it. And it's brutal. It's brutal.
You're in Massachusetts, where you live. What percentage of those, and just generally, what do you think percentage of those kids that tried out play AAU or play year round?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm going to say 25%.
Okay.
Lock into basketball as their primary sport and play it in one other season, whether it's spring or fall. Our high school has a lot of athletes who play one other sport. So I have some football players, soccer players who come into basketball, and I have many lacrosse players who start with basketball and lead into lacrosse season. So,
and what is your perfect scenario? I mean, you wear the mom hat too, but how do you feel about multi-sport athletes? As a coach,
my junior captain this year is my own son. And so I feel like he's a great leader in basketball because of his experience in lacrosse. Mm-hmm. And we have a really good lacrosse program. So I think it really helps him to do both. I'm a big fan of more than one sport. I mean, you can see it. You can see, the pure toughness of the football players who come out for basketball. The soccer players always in great cardio condition. On the girls' side, volleyball always really springy, really good verticals. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry, my phone is ringing.
That's okay.
Never ring.
Right. The only time anyone needs to talk to you is
it's a home phone. No one ever calls that number.
You still have a landline?
Yes. Wow. It never rings.
That's awesome. That's all good. So we talk about this a lot on the podcast, right? About multi-sport athletes, and what we know, what data shows is the best athletes play multiple sports and the benefits are not only athleticism, but less burnout, less overuse injuries. And frankly, what I'm seeing more and more is just they're more excited to be there, because I remember feeling that way. Like, oh, good, basketball's over. Okay, it's volleyball season. Okay, good, volleyball's over. It's softball season. Like, yes. You got excited about going to the next thing where, I'm joking, kind of not joking. We're flying home from Chicago this summer with my daughter. We're at the airport leaving the last tournament of the season, getting texts about next year. Like, we haven't even left the city, and
Right.
we're already planning for what's going on and what are you going to do and when you got to be at the beach on Monday and blah 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 blah. Like, there's no downtime, and that's killing our kids. Like, even the really, really competent athletes are like, I'm really good at it, but it's a job. And how do we keep them having fun? So maybe let's talk about your coaching strategy. And obviously you want to grow and develop and win, but how do you look at it when, like, right now you're looking at the beginning of a season? What's your approach, for the first 3 weeks? Is it, okay, we got to start and come out winning right away? Or how do you approach a season?
It's changed a lot, honestly, Kirsten, over the years, because I feel like I learned so much about exactly what you're talking about in watching my own kids have burnout. I've watched, my son, who is basketball all the time. I've watched him need a break. And this is a kid who lives and dies it. So imagine, a kid who loves to play basketball, but it's not his primary thing, or, a girl, that they need a break. They really need a break. So coming in, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of energy in the gym, which is amazing. We have a lot to teach because we have a lot of new kids. But the culture is really what we focus on. And we try to do early team bonding. We try to make things fun in the gym. We try to, build a playlist where kids get to pick the music they listen to during warm-ups, like stuff that energizes kids for the season. We try to make sure we capture it early and then build from there. And building trust with athletes. As a woman coaching boys, it takes me a little bit longer to get the rapport with some of these guys. So we focus on that early on, and then it pays back. And, honestly, the third week of January is tough for everybody. And it's a long basketball season, and they did not get a break at Christmas. So what we do early pays off at the end of January. They're in finals at the end of January. They're fried. So if we've already built a really good foundation, we get through it.
So coaching strategy too. You and I bonded a little bit over our sons having run up against. Oh,
I'm so sorry. That's never happened.
It's all right. We can cut it out. All good. So talking about coaching strategy and building them as more than just basketball players. And I know you and I have had similar experience. Both of my sons have gone through a situation with coaches that were only focused on the outcome and didn't focus on what each individual contributor was doing to make the sum of the parts stronger. So how many are on your roster? And knowing that you can only have 5 on the floor at a time, what is your approach to making every player feel valued? If, do you have kids? I'm assuming you do. Usually most teams do have kids that are going to get limited minutes. They're the kid with the biggest heart, but they don't have the size or maybe not as much talent. But how do we, I think what's interesting for parents to hear is, we parents look at it through our filter. And when you have to put the coaching hat on and realize, like, I've chosen these kids for a certain reason, but to hear it through your lens of a coaching strategy as to why I have every kid on the roster and what I want. Do you have individual conversations with each of those kids and like honestly tell them where they are, or do they have to figure it out? Or what's your approach to building rapport and building culture?
I really, truly cannot tell you enough how important is what you just asked. It is the foundation of everything that I do. There are 3 words that I think are the most important 3 words a coach will ever say to an athlete. And I know this from speaking to hundreds of athletes. And that is, I see you. I see you. Not I see you as a player. I see you as a human. I see you regardless if you played the whole game or you played limited minutes. I see you in practice. I see you out of practice. And if you are straight with kids and you speak from some authority that you see them, they will believe you. They will trust you. They will let you be their guide. And that took a long time for me to figure out. And I've talked to athletes all the time. I saw that you didn't get to play a lot. and they almost look horrified. We all saw it. Everybody knows that you didn't get to play a lot. So we need to address it. We can't ignore it. Ignoring it makes it shameful. There's some shame in not playing in a Friday night game. And there's no shame. And so we talk about it all the time, and we bring it up not to embarrass or shame kids. We bring it up because it's a real thing. And for me and my experiences, be straight. If you go around it, they will create their own dialogue around it with their friends, with their parents, with other teammates. They will get all kinds of information that's not accurate. Whether or not you play is decided by me. Why you don't play should be said by me. It shouldn't be said by your dad. And so if we're not going to have those conversations, then we have to know the dialogue is coming from somewhere that is not representative of us. So I spent a lot of time with it. And I have the great advantage of a nice sized coaching staff. There's 3 of us and there's 14 players. But I work with coaches who are hockey coaches, 29 athletes with 2 coaches, really complicated. So I think just to lead into my next part of how this can be done is to work with your leaders so that your leaders can share your message with the team, and the leaders have to see who they're leading. And I did a little workshop with some captains the other night, and I said to them, they said, I'm not comfortable talking to a player on my team who doesn't play a lot. This is a captain. And I said, why is that? And they said, because it's awkward to talk to a kid who doesn't get to play because I get to play a lot. And she, she said to me, I don't want to say anything because it makes me think it might make them feel bad. And I said, you not saying anything is saying something. And she thought about it for a while, and she was like, I didn't consider that. But I said, she knows that she's not playing or not, and she knows you know. And so to not address it, again, you're going to fill the void in with her friends are going to tell her this, and her roommate is going to tell her this, and all that kind of thing. So being straight is the bottom line. Being straight, being honest, expectations should be level set on the regular. I can't meet with my players every week or every day, but I can certainly check in with them. And midway through the season, have a little more formal check-in, especially if they're not improving their minutes or their minutes have changed considerably. Let's address, get through it so we know when the next stops are.
And parents, like, what a great life skill, right? Like, this, forget basketball, forget sport, forget hockey, whatever it is. Like, this is about, my mind just went to a dear, dear friend who I actually dedicated the book to, passed away a year and a half ago. And his widow now says to me, it's interesting to see who I thought were my good friends who don't reach out at all, and those who barely say anything. And I think it's the human nature to think, I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'm just not going to say anything.
100%.
And what research shows is just saying, I am sorry. I see you. I love that saying, gave me chills when you said it. I see you. I am here for you. And same, obviously not to that level, but it's a similar skill set to build, which is on both sides, right? I love it. My son was a part of a team where the kid who didn't play at all was comforting him after the games, right? Like, he was such a leader that he's like, he could have been the one that was pouting on the car ride home. And he was like, yeah, but you did this well and this well. And like, he had such a great empathetic heart. And what an amazing, so parents who your kid isn't playing, their skill set and their ladder is probably going to be against a different wall, but what they're learning as being a bench player is going to be a superpower for them in whatever they do in life, right?
Hallelujah. Honestly, Kirsten, you couldn't say it better. I hope that every parent of a player who's not getting a lot of playing time can hear that. And what I find with parents too is be straight. And it's really hard to hear that your son or daughter is not at the level they need to be at to get a lot of minutes, but be fair about what they could do to earn more. Be fair about what practices look like. We give all of our players the opportunity to play in practice. Win a practice. let's celebrate a win of a practice. I did a roundtable discussion yesterday with moms of athletes. And one of the things I said is when they come home from practice, ask them what went well, celebrate that, especially if they don't have a Friday night celebration because they don't feel like they can celebrate enough if they don't play. What happened on Tuesday? What a great thing to talk about at the dinner table and celebrate some really great things that happen at practice. And when you do, that's the winning mindset. I won practice and that's huge. And so I have kids win practice and I see them and we talk about it, and you hope those wins start turning into more minutes and games, but don't focus on the games and forget that you didn't win a practice this week. Right.
I love that. My daughter transferred to a different club this year. And so I have no idea whether she'll get much playing time for volleyball, but she came home for practice the other night and she's like, the other two right sides weren't there. I got all these reps. And she was so excited about that. Like, to your point, right? Which was, I won today because I was there and showing up. I mean, if there's one mantra in my life of what has worked for me is show up, keep showing up. When you have an opportunity, show up. And I know it's easier to say, I'm going to stay in my pajamas. I'm not going to go to meet those people. I'm not going to go, I'm interested in that school, but they're not recruiting me. I'm just going to stay home. 99.9% of the time when you've showed up at the doorstep to say, gosh, I'm here and gosh, I want to get better. If it's in your practice, the coaches will take note because they'll be like, wow, this person, and the kid I was referencing early, the coach said, I will never cut him ever. Right? Like he is the superpower. I don't know if you've read, I think we were exchanging books a couple weeks ago, but the captain's class, and he identified these 16, not one or two or five, but the 16 most successful tools that leaders, the most successful teams in the world. He studied, if you had to have won 4 world titles to even be considered in rugby, in cricket, in soccer, and everything. And he said it really, we all know Ronaldo and Jordan and all the big names, but the ones that had these skill sets that nobody talks about, those were the true leaders of the team. And they wanted no glory. They didn't want, nobody knows their name. They carried the bags. They got to the bus. They were the ones that, made sure the water bottles were picked up. Those are the true heroes of those teams. And we all look at, well, how many points did you score, right? We value what the outcome was and not the process.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I had a situation with captains. My team votes for captains. I can't say it enough to college coaches, high school coaches, middle school coaches. If you're going to have captains that serve your team, let your team vote in the captains and then teach the captains how to serve. I had an example where, we voted for captains and everybody gets an equal vote, including my coaching staff. Everyone gets 1 vote. Nobody gets 7 votes. So everyone gets 1. And it was pretty close. And also you have to nominate yourself. If you want to be in service to others, you shouldn't be picked because it's awkward. If you get picked to serve and you didn't really want to serve, that's tough. So let them nominate themselves and let them tell, the team what kind of captain they're going to be. And we had one of our players who I thought would have made a really good captain. And I thought he would have represented a portion of our team really well. He did not get the votes. And when we announced captains, I could tell that it was really hard for him to not get the votes. So I addressed it. And I said, I voted for you. I think that you will make a great captain. With that said, you will be part of our leadership in that we still want you to lead, even if you're not a captain. And I really said it because I really believe it, honestly. And later he sent me a text and said, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you saying that because I still want to lead, but it's hard now without knowing that the team didn't vote for me. And it's really interesting. And I said, you'll serve them whether they voted for you or not. And a lot, like to your point, a lot of great leaders were never had a C on their jersey. They served because it made sense for them. And so maybe the votes, maybe the votes got it wrong, but that doesn't mean you can't continue to serve the team. And I know he will. And I'll help him do that because I think there can't be, enough of an opportunity to serve. If everyone has the same mentality, it's just an amazing culture.
Julie Foudy, I was at an event for the Rose Bowl a couple months ago, and she talked about that 99 World Cup team that won it all. And of course, everybody knows Mia Hamm, and that's a household name. And I worked in the Mia Hamm building when I worked at Nike, right? But she said her style was so interesting. She goes, in fact, my nickname was Loudy Foudy. And she said, I was like, blah, 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 like all over the place. And, Abby Wambach had her style. And she said, in Mia Hamm's style was she'd come up and she'd put her hand on your shoulder. And like, she didn't even need to say anything. Like, she just was that calm and that centered in who she was. And so embracing everyone's different leadership style, it doesn't mean because you're the most vocal, you're going to make the best leader. But yet that's what she's always giving her opinion. He's always telling everybody what to do. They're the leader, right? And no, yes, that can be part of it, but we also need all the different styles in order to be successful.
Yeah. And I said to the ones that, got chosen as captain, you need to recognize that not everybody voted for you. So you need to address that from the beginning by saying, I know that everyone didn't vote for me, but now I'm in service to you and I want to do the best job I can. So it's okay for you to, give me feedback. And I love that. These are young 17, 18-year-old boys, and they're learning how to be in service to one another. It's amazing to watch. And, it's amazing to watch their growth from that perspective, along with obviously getting better on the court and like all those other things. But for me, it's such a privilege really to watch young boys lead one another in absolute moments of glory and total moments of defeat, because we know we're going to have both, right?
Mm-hmm.
This year, we're not going to go 20 and out. But
so peek behind the curtain. So what do? You do a special captain's meeting then, or how do you let them figure it out, or what's the strategy? What do you find the most successful teams do to set the team up for success?
Yeah, we use a workbook that some captains in college, have introduced me to, and there's 10 chapters with 10 different topics. And we generally try to bring up topics each week and talk about, first of all, what kind of captain do you want to be? So how do you see yourself as a leader? And then how can we get you there if you're not there already? And then we pick topics and we just sort of discuss what's the difference between an enforcer and an encourager, and which are you, and can you be both? Stuff like that. And really we don't add so much to their plates because they have so much going on, but small things. And then if there's something in particular, they really want to talk about or work on, we'll add that to our discussion. But it's brief. We come together for 15 minutes, in a week, and kind of go.
Coaches listening, what's the name of the book? Can you share the name?
I can share.
Do you know?
Can you see it? The Captain's
Team Captains. Ooh, I love that. The Complete Guide to Developing Team Leaders Whom Coaches Respect and Teammates Trust. Level 4. Ooh,
yeah,
that sounds great.
Really easy, and it's a workbook. So there's a lot of places to take notes, and there's a lot of places to circle and go back on. So I really.
Who's it written by?
Jeff Jansen.
Jeff Jansen. Okay, that's amazing. I might have to. There's one team I work with a lot, and he's always asking for ideas. So I love that, and that's how we get better, right? Is sharing all of these ideas. And okay, so your captains get these nuggets, and then what do they do with them? Or do they do their own meetings, or is it more organic? Is it just happening through their playing?
So this year I have 3 really strong captains, and they seem really, really enthusiastic about their jobs, and they really want to do well. So 2 of them are juniors and 1 is a senior, and they will figure it out for themselves and how often they need to meet. We will meet very briefly unless there's an issue. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with it and if they decide to meet more frequently. But already we're seeing leadership in practice that, we have not seen quite like we're seeing now. And that's 3 guys that are committed to it. The interesting thing is the 2 juniors are very competitive with one another, and they have been for years. So when they were introduced, they were at different schools. They're very similar. And so they've always been battling for position. They've always been 2 guys that have tried to one up each other. And this year they're both captains, and they'll work very well together finally, I think, rather than being two people against each other, two people together, but they still compete like crazy, which is a great thing for everyone else to see because they go after each other and then they congratulate each other for, work well done. So like that's setting a really good example.
Yeah, and I believe high tides raise all boats. So if you are going at it, if you're playing harder in practice, Susie Walton tells the story of Bill Walton then recruiting a center, and he was the number 2 center in the country. And the kid said, "Well, why would I come here? Bill Walton's already here." And John Wooden said, "Because you're going to play against the best center in the world in the United States every single practice. Just imagine how good you'll get if you battle against the best guy every day, right?" And when you look at it that way, instead of, well, I need to be the best and it's all about me, right? Like, yeah, I can actually get better.
Can we just very briefly talk about that? Because that's an important difference between girls and boys, in my opinion. Historically, the word competitive has been a real compliment to boys, and it's been something that girls have avoided because it's got a negative connotation. So if I say to Susan at the end of practice, "You were really competitive today," she's like, "No, I wasn't. It wasn't me." And you say it to a boy and he says, "Thank you." So we really want to work on the idea that you can be really competitive and have really good relationships with your teammates. And competitive doesn't need to be negative. It's complicated. It's complicated for girls. And a lot of girls who I talked to, and I gave a talk to a college basketball team about this topic. And there were several of them that said, "I don't want to rock the boat too much. So if I go in, I'm a hardo in practice, like I'm going after people, there's some backlash." And so we decided as a team, I helped them sort of decide as a team, and they came up with it, that they were going to be more forgiving and more accepting of this really competitive spirit in practice because it was going to help them reach their team goals. Ultimately, they want to win more games. They want to win their conference. They all mutually agreed on those goals. And then they decided the only way to do that is for us to really compete against each other. Like your point with Walton, you have to really compete against each other so that game night's easy. If practice is hard, you're like, "Oh, thank God I don't have to compete against my teammates." It's easier to compete against our opponent. Is an amazing mindset.
There's some research that I've quoted before, which I find true, and as a former athlete, is that women bond to battle and men battle to bond.
I love that.
So women, I need to know that you have my back. And if you have my back, then when we go onto that floor together, I will do anything for you. But if I don't feel like you have my back before we go out there, the trust isn't there. Whereas men, the testosterone is like, yeah, I'm going to show you. And once I prove to you how valuable I am, like I'm going to battle against you, and then we'll go to war together, right? And I think I agree that it is interesting dynamics between girls and boys or men and women in how we compete and what we think of as negative. And I think even with my boys, we've been trying to raise nice, kind humans. And I mean, I guess it's my podcast, so I can say what I want, but we have a saying going on in the house right now with the 2 boys that are playing college basketball. And my husband's like, "Go be a motherfucker. Go be an MFer. Like, you're on the floor for whatever, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. You don't have to be the nicest guy in the gym. You can go out there and battle." And I think they get these mixed messages of, you're supposed to be nice and you're supposed to be kind. And, oh yeah, but now go rip his head off. It's like, well, what do you want me to do?
It's complicated. Yeah. And we do know that testosterone, there's a physiological response to testosterone that can make you more competitive. So as women and as girls, we know that we don't have the testosterone edge necessarily that boys have. So we just have to adjust the mindset and just remember, we want our girls to be competitive. We want our girls to be fierce, right? That's a word, like, I love that for a girl, but we need to normalize it so that girls feel good about it too. And the boys, like the first time I started coaching high school boys, I think I told you this. at the end of practice, I let them scrimmage for 10 minutes and they started talking and they started chirping and they started battling and I started sweating and I turned to my assistants like, should we stop this? This seems really bad. And my assistant said, no, this is great. And I said, well, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with this. They really are going after each other. And practice ended and off they went to Chick-fil-A as a team. I mean, they had no problem with it. So we really, we know there's a little bit of a difference, but I think it is worth having the conversation. Thank you for blocking my shot today, because when I get to the game, I'm going to head fake.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Rather than, why did you block my shot? That was embarrassing, Yeah. So yeah, it's worth working on for girls for sure.
My husband and I in the morning have a routine of we get our coffee and I sit and meditate and he reads the news. And this morning he usually never even like says anything. He's happy in his own little world, and I am too. But he says, there's this great article about the WNBA and who the biggest trash talkers are. And apparently by far the one with the most score ever is Diana Taurasi. And she is known for like just starting to chirp at people. And then I thought, well, that's mean. And, my like, I hate it when girls are, but what she says are like, so rookie, are you gonna, you're gonna box out? Like she says things to them to just kind of like agitate them or whatever. Yep. And everybody voted for that. But like, she's also one of the best ones out there. And it's not mean spirited. It's silly and funny, but it's also like, I'm here. And they said she's done it from day one. Like there's never been a time when she doesn't do that. And it's like, there's something to be learned there. You don't have to be, always like P's and Q's. And that's what we want our girls to be, is nice and kind and not bossy, right?
Yeah, they're boys. I mean, when I coached my oldest when he was younger, it was probably middle school. And the referee came over after the game and said, one of your boys wouldn't shake hands. And I was like, who was it? And then he was like, number 33. I'm like, oh, wait, how could that ever happen? He's grown up with, a coach for a parent. And I talked to him and he was really confused. He was like, but that's the one guy who kept fouling me and he kept pushing me around. Like, I didn't want to shake his hand. Mm-hmm. And so like, that's the first lesson of, I want you to be respectful, shake hands. I want you to be a competitor. And yeah, it's going to get physical and it's, and he was saying stuff, and my son is a big crap talker, really. And he comes across guys who aren't, and, he's amazed, but I think some of it's part of the game. Some people get into guys' heads, right?
Yeah. So speaking of the elephant in the room that hasn't been addressed, so talk about parent or coaching your own kids. So perceptions, obviously the relationship that you two have, now you're doing it for the second time, right? Coaching your younger son as well. But what heat do you get for parents that are like, well, like I stood on the sidelines as the third assistant, which meant I basically got the water and gave him a little pep talk, every third game or whatever. And I had a parent last year who every parent on the sidelines was like, well, she says that her kid is playing because Kirsten's on the sidelines, and it had nothing to do with the lineup. I had nothing to do with who was getting playing time, and my kid wasn't even playing. So I can only imagine if your child is the captain and you're the head coach, how do you address that, or what does that feel like to, and more importantly, what's your relationship with like your son? How do you separate those two?
Those are two really good questions. The first one is, I generally start my parents' meetings and my big meetings by saying there is somebody on the team that I love more than everybody else. It's clear. And so, I think after the 25 years that I've been coaching, I've done a really good job of seeing every player for who they are as a player and as a person. And it shouldn't have an impact on your child as a person or a player. So we try to work really hard on that. I would say I'm probably lean on the side of being harder on my own kids, letting them maybe get away with a little bit less, and all those kinds of things. So I have had experiences in the past where parents have said, I really wish you wouldn't have benched your son for that, because that's hard for the team. He's a good player and it's hard for the team. So I think that's funny.
Do you overcompensate then? You see sometimes maybe you're overcompensating because you don't feel like people are questioning it? Yeah.
I think so. As far as the parent and being the coach and the mom, I learned a valuable lesson with my oldest in a game where he struggled in the game. There were things that he didn't do very well. And he asked if he could drive home with me and not take the team bus. So I said yes. We got in the car and I proceeded the entire 30 minutes on the way home to tell him everything that he did wrong and where he could be better and this and that, and picked apart every play of the game. And we got to the house and he didn't say a word. He opened the car door and was sick. And by the time we got him into the house, he had a fever of 103. I was thinking as a mother, how could I have missed all of that? I missed all of it. He was really sick. He was sick in the game. He didn't want to ride the bus because he wasn't feeling well. But I was so consumed with coaching him that I didn't even ask why he wouldn't have taken the bus. And it wasn't until he was literally in bed that I realized I missed being a mom. I just completely missed it. It's unbelievable. Like, I was horrified. So now I generally finish games with my own kids and say, do you want a coach or do you want a mom? Or do you need a coach or do you need a mom? And usually they'll say, I just would rather have a mom. And then, I'll do the mom things. Sometimes we'll get in the car and they'll say, yeah, go ahead. Give me the coach. And that's with all my kids, with all their sports. So, usually I'm sensitive to the fact that if it's basketball, I am his coach. But that's how I get around I'd rather be a mom to my kids than be a coach. It's my primary job. So I don't want to mess it up. So usually I'll give them the option.
So how did you rectify that situation with your son?
Probably just begging for forgiveness and telling him it would never happen again. And I can't believe it was such a massive miss. And trying to really think of how I could have missed that. But, he's a big basketball guy, so he really likes to be coached. So it was like one of those things where I need a better feel.
But again, you owning it and modeling it and showing him I'm not perfect either. I mean, that's what parents ask all the time, is like, well, so this is frustrating for me. And I yelled, or I did the wrong thing, or I complained the whole way home about the refs. And, what do I do now? Well, now you admit I'm human. I made a mistake. I didn't do it the best. I'm sorry. And let's move forward. Can we find a way to, how do you feel about what happened? And and usually they're like relieved because they're like, oh, wow, good. Okay, now I have permission to make a mistake. I also don't need to be perfect. It's like these kids are living in this generation where everything, you're supposed to get the 4.5 and get into the best school and be the best player. And it's so much pressure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I make lots of mistakes over here, so my kids are used to it. But yeah, I agree. People handle a mistake. I mean, honestly, we're all going to make them, right?
Yeah. I find I'm actually better at admitting my mistakes with my kids than my husband. The other night I made a mistake and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. He goes, what? And I'm like, okay, I'm getting better at it. Right? It's hard for us all.
It is. I agree.
So let's talk a little bit about, so we have the same passion of helping others thrive through this adversity. Maybe let's dive a little bit into, you're working with a university, you're working across all their teams, right? So Curry University, is that right?
Working with 5 teams. Yep.
5 teams. Okay. So what are the biggest themes that you get that you're being asked for by the coaches and the players to help with?
Unequivocally, it is performance anxiety or lack of playing time. And usually performance anxiety and lack of playing time are really tied together. The issue with a change in performance, meaning somebody who has been playing, historically very well and suddenly starts playing poorly or starts losing time and those kinds of things, is we're not trying to recreate your skill set. You are good enough already. We know that because you've had a lot of success. So something is going on that is causing you to not perform at the level you want to perform at. So for me as a mental fitness coach, 99% of the time it's a mindset issue. And you got to find some winning ways again. And you got to find the wins to get you back to a place where you're clear-minded and you can play at the level you want to play at. So that's the number one thing that I hear. Jokingly, the other night I was at Target with my son and I was doing self-checkout and I looked down at my phone and I had 2 text messages from 2 coaches that I work with. And I turned to my son and I said, tell me how much this team lost by and how much this team lost by. And he said, how do you know they lost? And I said, because they both texted me. So I'm not getting text messages from coaches who are winning games and saying, just wanted to let you know. Usually it's the Monday quarterback. Is that what you call it? The
Monday morning quarterback. Yep.
Monday morning quarterback. I like to do that with coaches. They need a place to speak very freely about how things went. They're not going to be judged. Maybe they don't want to talk to their assistant coaches about it because they want to keep a position, of confidence and, that they have authority over what's going on. So sometimes I'll talk to coaches, literally just tell me what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really exceptional coaches that need 20 minutes of, do you mind watching this clip for me over and over, which I did this week. I watched the last 10 seconds of a Division I college basketball game with a head coach over and over, reviewing what happened in the last second. And she asked me questions about what I thought happened. She was trying to clarify it in her own mind. She was trying to make sure that what she was seeing, she asked me, did I think this happen? Did I think this was purposeful? Did I think, which was an amazing way for her just to work through it. And then she put it away and that was it. So I think coaches need to work with someone that doesn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak.
And that is a great point, right? Who coaches coaches? Like, we're all human, right? So who do you vent to? Who do they vent to? Their staff, I guess, right?
And honestly, they really want to talk to somebody who can just hear them and pose different questions, and then they can let it go. Losing a game is hard for everybody. I want parents to know it hurts me as much as it hurts them. It is painful to lose a game that you should have won. It's painful as a coach to have not prepared your team enough for the game and to feel responsible and to think back of changes that I could have made as a coach, decisions I could have made, players I could have played differently, kids I could have motivated better. Like, everything that happens in a game, I'm going to take personally and to heart. So parents need to know that. Coaches suffer too when there's a loss, and allowing them to work through it a little bit is one of my favorite things to do as a mental fitness coach, working with coaches. And on the player side, mostly I talk to players about changes they can make in practice, changes they can make with their game prep, things that they can do to give them the best chance for success. Knowing they might only get, in hockey, they might only get 5 shifts.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do? I mean, there can't be a hero in 5 shifts. So rather than trying to continuously be a hero in 5 shifts, start being a hero in practice where you have a lot of opportunity. The second one is label your mistakes, correct them, and move on. And that's a huge deal. I say people all the time, the most effective coach you're ever going to have, right here, right in your own mind.
I call that name it to tame it.
Exactly.
Right? Name it. You put a name on it. Okay, this happened. All right, now I can move on. Right?
Exactly. What did you need your coach to say? I needed my coach to kick me in the butt. Great. Kick yourself in the butt a little bit. What do you need from your coach? I need my coach to be a little more understanding because I'm struggling. Great. That inner coach can do that too. So learn how to coach yourself as well. And you're going to have a lifelong coach who loves you and is always with you. So that's a great coach to work on.
I've got a client right now. She's a D3 basketball player and tore some tendons in her foot and so has been out. And she's supposed to get cleared to play before the first big game on last Saturday. And Friday she goes to the PT, and the PT, who the only one that's authorized to clear her, isn't there that day. And she goes to the coach, and the coach says, well, clearly you don't care about playing if you didn't figure out a way to get cleared. So he put it all back on her, and she's 19 or whatever. And she said, now I know he didn't mean that. And I thought, wow, what an insightful, I mean, I was so impressed. I said, that is such a great, she's like, I know he was just mad because I didn't get a play. I said, yeah, that's such great perspective. Totally. To realize that it wasn't about you, because I think what happens is we hear something like that. And then at least I know my 19-year-old self was like, they don't like me. He thinks I don't care. I'm a horrible person. And she was able to completely separate the two. And then we were able to strategize she was getting ready to go to the next PT appointment, and said, okay, what do you need to get out of this PT appointment to make sure you have the tools to, because, I said, you've been out for 3 months. You're not just going to go 0 to 100. So what kind of clearance do you need for what amount of minutes so that you can be healthy, when the season's ending? I mean, it's nice to be getting the minutes now, but we want to make sure you're able to finish the season and not just, okay, yes, you got cleared for 30 minutes. I'm going to keep you on the floor the whole time. But I love it when athletes, and they have these great insights that they're able to coach themselves. I was like, wow, that is so good. And when I told her, wow, I'm so impressed, she's like, you are? Like, that's all she needed. She's like, this was so great. I feel so much better. It's like, oh,
I mean,
very.
I feel like my job is so easy because I feel like anyone could do it. I mean, there's affirmations, there's I see you, I hear you. The other thing is, setting goals for yourself that are manageable and winnable. I mean, we have teams that, the team goal is to win the conference, which is going to happen in March. And then it's like, wow, okay. So every day we have to work on something that's not going to happen for 3 months. Like, that doesn't sound like a great idea. Let's have that one. But now, can we have some that we can learn during the season? So can we have some manageable goals that are, kind of like your athlete coming back from an injury and she wants to be the MVP of the league? I don't know what she can do tomorrow for that. That's a really tough one. So it's like, let's pick, what can you do in 5 minutes? What can you do in 10 minutes? What can you do, as you build yourself back up? What are some winnable goals? And then you can feel like a winner and you can get a winning mindset, right?
Right. And there are goals that we have control over, and there are goals that are outcomes that we don't have control over, right? And I think that also gets conflated where, oh, well, I want to be the league MVP, or I want to write a New York Times bestselling book, or I want to, make $1 million. So in order to do any of those, it starts with, what am I doing today in this moment? And what is my mindset about how I'm approaching that? The outcome will come if it's meant to be, but it won't happen just sitting here wishing about it. And it won't happen because I put that as a goal. Right? Like, now it requires me, how do I show up and what are the choices I'm making? And most importantly, as you and I, sing from the same song sheet, is what am I telling myself about what's possible today in this moment? And parents who are listening, if your kid's coming home and saying, well, I'm not getting the reps in practice. Okay, that's something to go advocate for yourself, because, I think we talked about this, but the Tom Brady little video he talked about, he was 7th on the roster at Michigan. He's like, if I got 2 reps in practice, like, that was my Super Bowl. And that's all I focused on, were those 2 reps. So it doesn't have to be huge volumes, but it's, how are you showing up in those 2 reps? Is it just like, whatever, I'm obviously not a priority? Or is it, this is my Super Bowl, I'm going for this moment? And that's mindset.
100%. 100%. And I think there's some lofty goals too. And then when they realize these, are dream crushing moments where they're not going to play for the Bruins, or they're not going to play for, the Patriots or whatever, is they start to lose the love for the sport, because the sport's not giving them back their dream. Whereas, adjust the dream. You love your sport. You're not in love with your sport. Like, I say that to a lot of the athletes who come to me and say, I'm not sure I love it anymore. Well, you're not in love with it. I think you still love it. So let's find, a way to fall back in love with it by making goals and dreams and stuff that are really fulfilling and realistic and can get you to the next one. And I don't want you to throw away the dream to play for the Boston Red Sox. That's still your dream. So we're not going to ignore it. But if that's your only dream, that's not going to give you what you want. The chance of baseball giving you that dream back is unlikely, and it's also can be dream crushing, right?
And there's so many things that are tangential to that dream that you can do. And like you and I, like, we're both done playing, but the fact that I get to still talk about it all day, the fact that I got to work for a company like Nike, the fact that I get to motivate and inspire, I'm clearly not playing on the AVP, but I'm still involved in helping and hopefully inspiring athletes and parents, right? So there will be that, and I remember my oldest, I found the piece of paper under his bed when he was 9, and I swear I didn't do it, but he had a list 100 things I'm going to accomplish in life. I was like, wow. He was like, we're gonna win state, and I'm gonna be the MVP, and I'm gonna play D1 basketball for Duke, and I'm gonna play in the NBA, and I'm gonna be in ESPN. I loved that. Made me so. I wish I still had that piece of paper, because did any of those happen? No, not necessarily. But what it did was put this idea that I can dream big, and then every day I'm showing up for myself. And the dream is moving on. Now he's 23, and no, he's not going to go play in the NBA, but he's going to take everything and all these tools that he's learned, and the grit and the dedication and the headwinds that he's faced, and that ladder will go against the new wall that will help him climb that wall too.
100%. Totally agree.
Okay, so we're at an hour. I usually do about 30 minutes, but this is such a great conversation. So I'll wrap it up. But
days.
But let's talk about that. I ask every guest this. This is my favorite question. It's not as this is a softball for you, but how would you finish this sentence? The best athletes I know do this. It can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be a story. You can take it in any direction you want. But the best athletes I know do this.
I'm going to give you a classic kind of answer. It's just the first thing that comes to my head. Work hard every day. And that's cliche a little bit. And what working hard to one is not the same as what's working hard to the other, but it's tremendously fulfilling to know you gave everything you had. And if you do that every day, you get to be a champion every day for yourself. And I say all the time, if you did. And if you didn't, that's okay too. Regroup, do it tomorrow. But the best athletes that I've worked with and talked to almost always have a work ethic that they've set for themselves, and they hit it. So work hard every day. I know. I wish I had your answer.
No, I love that answer. I think that's a great answer. And it's true. And you're right. We don't always feel like it. And if today's best is 50% of my best, that's okay. Like, again, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress. And you can raise your hand and say, you know what? Today was 50% because of X, Y, and Z. That's fine. If 90% of your time you're giving an excuse or a reason that you didn't hit your mark, that's another story. But if you have that occasional off day, that is fine. And then get the win somewhere else. Maybe it's, we asked our daughter the other night, what was the best thing that happened today? They gave us cookies. Like, okay, fine. Right? Like, sometimes that's what you needed that day was a cookie. Like, that's okay. It doesn't have to be that, right? That you aced the test.
Cookie is always a good day for me too.
Exactly. I'm all about the cookies. Awesome. So where can people find you and follow you, and particularly our East Coast friends who, may want to hire a coach to work with their athlete? Tell us about.
Thank you. MartindaleCoaching.com. Most of my athletes I work with over Zoom. I love working with athletes in a place that they're really comfortable. A lot of dorm room conversations. I've talked to athletes when they're sitting quietly in their own car. Would love to speak to coaches who need someone to, just be the Monday morning quarterback with. And it's a privilege to do that. And hopefully, it's something that gives a little bit of reprieve to coaches who struggle as well. Like, we're all in it together. We all have roles in this, but when a team wins, a team loses, all these kinds of things, all of us are impacted. Parents, coaches, players, siblings of players, for sure.
Yeah, my son, actually, he was playing for Colgate, and they played Arizona, and they're number 2. I think they're now number 1 in the nation. And walking into that gym that was completely packed, sold out at 1:00 in the afternoon with maybe 30 Colgate fans and the whole thing. And, it's such a privilege, and you're just so honored to be there. And it's hard. It's hard to say, okay, I had 3 people stop me. Where is Colgate? Where is that school? They don't even know where it is, much less, we're going to trample you. But what a privilege to have those opportunities on any stage to get to play. And so most of my feeling was like, I was just proud. Like, okay, he's going for it. Are they going to win? Probably not. But letting them take big swings. And he came out afterwards. He was like, actually, it was kind of fun. Like, it was okay to, these are guys I've been watching their YouTube videos for years. Yeah. And now I was on the floor with them. So what a privilege.
Yeah. And, I love that you are going to finish with that, because obviously, your privilege, the pressure is your privilege. And even for me, cutting kids, I hate to cut kids. It's the worst part of my job. But the privilege is that I get to be there for them and be as honest and straightforward with them as I can be, that maybe softens the blow a little bit. And so I agree with you 100%. The hard things are the privilege, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Linda, thank you so much for your time. This is lovely. Yeah. Parents, coaches, athletes, thank you for listening. Please like and share. How we grow this is by getting the word out. If you're looking for some new resets for this year, we've got some good tips for you in the Raising Empowered Athletes book too. So please check that out on my website, kirstenjonesinc.com. Thank you. It's so much fun.
Thank you.
Parents, let's do this.